Hey everyone, this is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching with today's video, which is what I promised in the last video when we were looking at the McCall's Quilting Quarterly magazine. And I told you that I had chosen one of the quilts in there to do, and I really like the quilt. So I'm going to start right away. I turn over here. And this was on page 79, and it's called Evening Glow. And it's really pretty. And this is related to the log cabin, okay? And you can do it in a number of ways with your fabric. And what happens is you end up with an hourglass looking, the way that you set your blocks straight up and down with the dark on the top and the bottom and the lights on the side. And it's reminded me of a courthouse steps, but also when you turn it like this, it reminds me of an hourglass. So we're going to be using darks and lights as we get ready to start, and I'll tell you some of the dimensions. And the first thing I did is I wanted to go through and make sure I understand what the parts were, because then it'd keep me from being frustrated later. And so basically what it is, you're going to have one piece called A, and that's going to be a 2.5-inch square that goes in the center. And that's really the focal point of what you're going to do, whether you decide to make it a solid color or a print color. It works either way, but it's going to be what draws a person's eye to it, especially with it being 2.5-inch. And then all of the other strips are going to be 1.5 inches wide, and they're going to vary in lengths, and we'll see that. And then I figured out, well, I'm only going to need 2 of length B, and I put a star on there to let me know I needed a light and a dark. The next one, when I had 4 pieces, I was going to have the C pieces. There was their length, and then a star indicated that I was going to have 2 lights, and I would have 2 darks. The same thing happened with number 4, except the length was different. And then the last one, part E, there's only 2 of those, and they're going to be on the outside edge. And before I forget it, I want to talk about this piece. When you figure out the color that you want, if you're going to cut a lot from a particular piece for this one, then I take and spray it with starch and press it. And the reason I'm saying that is, even when I did, and what I found was, this is the side, the length that wants to stretch. Well, it's the outside part, and that affects the shape of your square as you go. So what I did was, when I found out I did that 1.5, I just sprayed that little strip and pressed it, and that worked out really nice. So that's going to be the parts that you have. All right, then to get the hourglass effect, or the courthouse steps effect, this is where I really went to. I actually did both of these before I even thought about doing this one, because I want to know what I'm going to be doing. And so there's my 2.5-inch interest piece right in the middle. That's A. Now, if you remember, we had B, we only had 2. So one's on this side and one's on this side. And this is going to be my dark side. Now, let's see. I did it backwards. This is going to be my light side, and this is going to be my light side. And those will be the dark. This is actually the way it's laying that it would be. So there's just 2 B's. Then when you get to C, you're going to have a C and a C, and then a C and a C. They're all the same length, and they fit. And then after your C, then you come to a D. Before you know it, you've gone all the way around, because now there's a D, a D, a D, and a D. And that one piece to look at, to think about making sure that it doesn't stretch, is the E on this end of the dark, and E on the other end of the dark. And this is where I just really watched what I was doing, because you do your B and your B, and then you can do your CNC and then your CNC, and you'll see as we go the way that fits together. But both of those helped. And I really like log cabin because I like messing with the colors and seeing what you get. And it's really neat because I start out, and usually my first one is kind of wonky. And then as I do each one of the blocks, they get better and better. And when I used to do, one of my favorites was to do 1-inch strips. And I use those to make small log cabin blocks and make pocketbooks or make a blanket with those. And the other reason I got this one is I like the 1.5-inch stitch 1.5-inch strips because I really wanted to do this by hand. And I'm going to come back to that because I like to have something to work on with my hands at night. So here's one that I started with, and you can see how well the colors go together. And that's because I took a set that belonged together. I have discovered I like putting crazy things together, but sometimes I like somebody else to do the work so that I can get them together. And so this was actually from a collection, and I cut out my parts. And you can see my focal point was the green in the center, and it was just dots. And then my darks go out to the top and down, and then my green, then my lights go out. So, but here you can see that it's the 2 side B's, the 2 side C's, and then back to the C's over here. And that's where all 4 of those will be. And this is really fun to go out. And then on this one, I just went, a nice thing about this is I just use my walking foot and then just followed around some of the lines to go all around. And that was really fun because that kept with the look of the strips that you had on the front. So I did that one. That one was fun. I said, well, I'm going to veer off and do something else. I was just having a good time. So this time, I have a friend that loves purple. I said, I've got this crazy butterfly fabric that I don't know that I'll ever do much with. And so that became my focal point. Now here you can see, this one must have been my first one on this one because it's wonky there. But I'll show you as I go. I watch this box in the middle to a certain extent. And also as I get these longer pieces out here, I'll actually leave a little extra piece on the end. Because if anything's going to change, it's going to start from in here. And then when you get here, your shape might be off. And we'll look at that because these two is particularly would work that way. And then I just put a border around the outside edge. And this time I did the same thing going around the blocks. But I said, what a great way to use up a big chunk of that material and put it on the back. And this was 4 blocks together. And it made a really nice shaped runner. And then I thought, okay, I've sort of got my colors under control and I've sort of got my strips under control. I'm going to go back to one of my strip boxes. I have a box and I have some things that have 2 inches, some have 2.5, some of them have 3. When I get ready to clean my material up so it'll pack up good or fold up good, then I'll have those boxes. So I went to the box that just had strips. And I said, let's see what I can put together. And I chose, as my focal color was the green with the leaves. And then I just went through and I looked at my strips. And I'd pick a strip and I'd cut it. And then I'd pick a strip and I'd cut it. And I didn't worry about putting it in that place right then. And I was working on 4 blocks. So I also had 2 more, the ones we're going to look at today. And you can see, you can actually see some wonky in this other one. If you look, this one got off right at the very beginning, and I'll show you. Well, I'll try and tell you some clues for that, and then we're going to be ready to start on one of those blocks. The other thing that I did was I cut, oh, I know, I think it was on that purple one. I went and I cut some 1.5-inch strips, and I didn't worry about measuring them to be a short distance, 6.5, 4.5 of that. I just cut a strip, and then I would pull a strip out of the box, one from the light side or one from the dark side, and I decided that was going to be on there. And so it was random. It was more random, although I had picked the colors ahead that I'd like to use. So those are a couple techniques for picking your colors and cutting those. And for these projects, I wanted to do them a certain way instead of just crazy wise. So I actually planned it out. And I have these sitting down on my batting covered piece of cardboard. Okay, I'm going to start with the very center. I've got my A and I've got a B. And you can see I even cut this a little bit longer when I started. And that's okay because I like doing it that way. And I'm going to, because these are so short, I'm going to go ahead and use my thread catcher on the front and get it set up. Now you're going to make it 1/4 inch. And the more consistent you are with your 1/4 inch, the better. I'm going to line this one up because I know that square was square. So I'm going to line it up. And this looks like it's pretty even. And I'm going to run it at 1/4 inch. Turned it up a little bit there. Then here's what I like is I do have an extra part on here. I don't cut it from this side. I turn it over and I can look exactly along that box and I can cut it off. And what I want to say too is always cut from the outside in, because if you start doing it the other way, for some reason, it's hard to keep it straight. And these you can either open or you can just fold to one side. And right now there's really no reason to press, so I'm going to go ahead and grab the next one. All right, here again. Neither one of those is really flat. I think I'm going to straight, and I'm going to lay this on there. And again, it's small. This is so much fun because by the time you start, you're done with your square. It's amazing. All right, I'm going to turn it over. And there again, I can see it's off a little bit. And there again, this one's pretty small, so it's easy to go straight in. And then I'm going to press that one out. So we've got the center. So now we're ready to go. And you're going to look for the piece, which would be one of your C's. So the top C, this one I had on that side, so this will be the top. All right, I'm going to lay my C on there. And that looks really good. So, and it sounds like it'd take you forever with the way I'm talking. But the fact is, once you get started, let's see, I can do that one. Then I know what goes on the other side, so I'm just going to turn it around and get the color that went on there. And the log cabin is one of the things that I've never seen an ugly log cabin. They have so much personality, whether it's the colors you choose or the way you just let it be scrappy. And like in this one, you just have to make sure that you've got the lights on the light side and the darks on the dark side. I'm going to turn these because I know now that one's pretty good. All right. So now we've got A, B, C, the dark sides, which are going up and down, or going across. All right, now I'm going to go to my next one. As you see, actually, when I first started cutting them out for this project, I did cut them exactly. And as I got going, I started saying, I'd rather just do a little trim job than be short, which happens sometimes if you get off. And this fabric was so nice. I haven't even had to take it over to press it yet. And sometimes people even suggest don't press until you get, you know, far along, because sometimes when you're pressing, I still want this in here. You'll actually start ironing, and that's when you start getting things to shift out of position. And I'll show you, like, don't want to forget to show you one thing about putting your blocks together. Let's turn this one around. Here he goes. And that one's good. And that one. And that's just because I just did that so that I would have the material instead of having to cut another piece. And you can open your seams. Just depends. All right, now I need a top. And now I'm going to, the dark is going up just like it's supposed to. And I've got plenty of material, so I'm going to trim both sides. I'm just going to let this go off that end. And if you have a couple of them set up, you can do your machine chain stitching, where you go from one block to the next as you're adding the colors on. And I like to do that when I was especially using those 1-inch strips, because they were so little. And it was nice to have a line. See, that I could have my next one ready to go here. I have no idea how this one's going to look. This other end, I'm coming back to a blue, my yellow, and I said I'm going to go to a blue. Pick up the blue in there. I'm trying to remember everything. I think I will step over and press for a minute. So now I've got the next two. We're almost to the end. And this time I'm going to do a little cheat. I took a little bit of that end and stuck it out there. So that's going to be the part to catch my first stitch, instead of putting that my stitch catcher underneath there like that one. And I'm ready to go. And then if you had another one to run it into, you wouldn't have to worry about it. Okay, and this one, see this was getting towards those last two rows, and I wanted to make sure that I had enough material instead of going and trying to cut again. All right. And if you're a really, really good, careful cutter, you may not want to worry about this and just do it. It's just like, it's what I love about quilting. I say that all the time. There's so many ways to do things. And you can repeat colors. Like here, I've repeated this color in there in the same block. Now we're down to the last two strips, which are long. And sometimes I even look to see if I really want to do it that way. So, but I'm going to add this 8.5-inch strip over here. Remember, these are just 1.5 inches wide. you can get a lot of strips, and this one's going to go over on this end, and it's going to look different from the others. And sometimes it's not your stitching that's going to make that outside one distorted. It's going to be when you go to press on it. So that's the one of the two that I'd be careful about. Let's see how we are. We're almost to the end. Yeah, that one looked pretty straight. Come on there. All right, let's see what we ended up with. I'm going to finger press this side. And finger press this side. Well, I like that side. Sometimes you like some sides better than others. And there I've made this nice block, which is supposed to be an 8-inch block. Well, I've got 8.5, and that's right, because that gives me a 1/4 of an inch on this side and a 1/4 of an inch on that side. Then what I wanted to show you was what I found a good way to put my blocks together. Let's move this. There you go. All right, because the outside looks kind of off right there. But then you can just change it and say, well, I'm going to put it on this side. Well, that looks closer, and that's all right. That doesn't bother me, so I'm going to fold it over. And if you take that strip, that 8.5 inch and the 8.5 inch, and you have one going up and one going down, doesn't matter which one of your seams. Yeah, so I'm going to move this one down this time, and I'm going to pin it to lock it in place. And then I'm going to go to the other end, and they don't look like they're going to fit. Well, let me tell you, you're going to be surprised. So you've got your two ends, fold one up and one down. I think I'll do it this way this time, doesn't matter. Line them up. And it's not too far there, but this will help them to stay. And as I hold it, I sort of line it up, and then I hold on to this end and sort of give it a little, sort of like a little tug or a little, to make it snug towards you. So then just go across and do your 1/4 inch. Now let's see how we did. And there you got it. And I even got a nice color next to that color. That was actually a blessing. And so that is our log cabin block. Makes an 8-inch finished block. And you can do all kinds of things, because the sample they had done a table runner like the one I did. They actually made a smaller one, since I'm using their ideas here today. Let's see there it is. They've got a crib, which is 4x4. You can have fun with that with your colors. There's a throw, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 5x7. And then they had the one that was in the magazine, which was a queen size, and it takes 121 blocks, and it used about a 4-inch border, and then a 1.5 or 2 inch in there, depending on what you want. But this is really, if you've never done log cabin, try it. if you've done it before, this is a good size to work with, and you can have a lot of fun, especially if you've got a lot of scrap material, or if you have a collection of material where they all go together already for you. This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did doing it. And I want to thank you for watching. If I have any notes, I'll have those in the description. I'll have the time codes in there. Please hit subscribe. I noticed that if you're in the end screen and you see my head, just take and tap my head and you will have subscribed. And it doesn't cost you anything. Thank you.